Thanks, Adam. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Eric Vincent Guichard, Chairman and CEO of Gravitas Capital.
Great. I'd like to thank the organizers, Country Factor, for inviting me, also the Zambian delegation for organizing this very important, very prestigious venue to discuss a very important subject, as the Honorable Minister mentioned, which is investment opportunities in Zambia, and more importantly, what are how can the private sector participate in the new mandate as laid out by the Honorable Minister. My name is Eric Guichard, as was indicated. I'm a CEO and founder of homestrings.com, which is essentially a platform that is trying to work out a way of channeling diaspora. The issue of diaspora is one that's been on the lips of a number of countries. How do you marshal the diaspora to participate in investments? And the numbers are quite compelling. According to the World Bank, there are about 23 million Africans living outside of the continent of Africa, all of whom are in London. Just kidding. And that 23 million Africans who are living abroad have savings of about $35 billion. That's $35 billion per annum that is basically in Western banks earning, if you count inflation, earning negative returns. So the question is, should that remain idle? In addition to that, The Economist had a cover article on the diaspora, and if you looked at the numbers, global diaspora transfers from the West, where they work, to their home country is about $450 billion worldwide. Of that share, Africa is about $40 billion. Now, that number may seem big, but if you could contrast it to, for example, the World Bank's entire Africa portfolio is about $20 billion. So you have person-to-person transfers that are equal to $40 billion, and the World Bank's entire portfolio, including grants, which is equal to $20 billion. It raises the question, shouldn't there be a way of channeling that $40 billion, or at least a portion of that $40 billion, into the kinds of projects that the Honorable Minister talked about here, which are not only profitable, but also have a significant impact on development. So what I'm going to take my 15 minutes to talk about is recognizing who are these members of the diaspora, the Zambians included, and what are their motivations, and more importantly, how do you go about channeling these resources into investment projects that make a difference back home, but are also profitable. Use this or that. Yeah. So as I mentioned, what are the facts? As I mentioned earlier, the key element here is that these remittances are growing at about 10 to 15% per annum, and that's including the recession of 2008, the crisis of 2008, which was a key test in terms of the resilience of remittances. One of the other elements about remittances, which is proponed by my former employer, the World Bank, is that the majority of these remittances are basically for consumption, i.e. people buy tomato paste, they go to the pharmacy to buy medicines for auntie, etc. The reality is, because I'm actually from Guinea, Conakry in West Africa, and I remit to my relatives in Guinea and in Senegal, and I know for a fact that my relatives are actually investing in property, they're investing in land, they're investing in small businesses, they're importing equipment to basically supply their small businesses. So a big portion of those remittances is actually being used for more than simply remittances, contrary to the conventional wisdom. So, what else do we know about remittances? We talked about the size. The other element, which is proven by the World Bank's report on migration, is that remittances are resilient in period of fiscal crisis, like the one that we are in right now in the West. Remittances actually tend to increase, i.e. whenever there is a crisis back home, the size of remittances actually go up in order to support the family to overcome the local crisis. As I mentioned, in 2008, remittances were also tested when you had a crisis in the host country. Now, what we discovered is that depending on what industry the individual who is sending money is working in, those remittances may fluctuate. So for example, in the US, where you have a big contingent of Central Americans who work in the housing industry, when the housing industry collapsed, remittances collapsed also by 60%. Whereas in the case of the Caribbean, where the biggest remitters are doctors, nurses, and engineers and lawyers, remittances only dropped by 15%. Okay? So the source of remittances is actually very important in terms of the characteristic. The key question for me as a businessman, having seen those numbers, is are remittance flows, however big they are, equal to diaspora investment flows? And in order to answer that, you have to learn a little bit more about who these remitters are in aggregate. Luckily for me, and I'm sure most entrepreneurs who are in this room will tell you that you very rarely have the opportunity of saying, I have this business idea, oh, and by the way, it's backed by academic research. So I'm here to tell you that Homestrings is actually backed by academic research, which was conducted by George Washington University Diaspora Center. And they, in conjunction with Western Union, using Western Union's data, in addition to some other data, ran a study of the African diaspora living in the US. And the key assumption here is that the same motivations that you have Africans living in the US, you probably have the same motivations for Africans living in the UK. So they looked at about 1,000 members of US-based African diaspora. The key elements of the objective that they were looking for was one, who are they? What's their profile? What is their investment activity and their interest in terms of back home? Number 3, what are the obstacles that they face in terms of investing back home? Number 4, are there any advantages to being a member of the diaspora? And last but not least, what their motivations are. So I'm going to give you some quick summary elements here. The average stay of the diaspora in the US is about 22 years, which I think is somewhat similar to the diaspora here in the UK. 72% swear that they're going back home at some point. Many of them are actually married to either Americans or Brits, so the likelihood of that happening is very low. The average respondent in this case is a 46-year-old professional, so really mature, really rooted. More than 50% of them have annual incomes in excess of $100,000. So they clearly have reserves that they are using to invest back home. The average remittances, based on Western Union data and some of the banking data that they used, is about $13,000 with a standard deviation of about $22,000. So these are very significant transfers that are actually happening. And that also is a side proof of it's not subsistence money that's being sent. I mean, I'm not sure how many people are spending, $22,000 on tomato paste and rice. But clearly, this tells you a lot more than that. So the demographics: highly educated members of the diaspora. In excess of 50% have bachelor's degrees. In terms of occupation, as I mentioned, the African diaspora in particular is highly professional. I.e., these are individuals who have started putting the hours for their degrees, but they've also have acquired very stable, very long-term jobs. In terms of their risk tolerance, again, this is contrary to conventional wisdom. The risk tolerance of the diaspora is actually higher than what prevailing assumptions would assume. An aggregate of more than 80% of them view themselves as risk takers. I think that's very important in terms of the kinds of investment opportunities that were presented here by the Zambian delegation. In terms of their contact with back home, I'll point you to 2 key elements here. The number of visits. Only 29% of the respondents actually take a plane to go home and visit their relatives. They mostly get contact with their relatives via friends, but more importantly, 75% of them use the web to stay in touch with their home country, both in terms of news, but also in terms of finding investment opportunities. This is critically important to the proposition that we're making. In terms of investment interest, this was a very important information to gather. You look at very high proportions in terms of the diversity of asset classes that the diaspora is actually interested in. So from the obvious, which is personal real estate, to actually commercial real estate, to actually investing in SME in terms of manufacturing expansion, services, even lending. And the one shocking number that I saw was they're even interested in lending at below market rates. I mean, interest rates are so poor in the West that they're willing to invest at below market rates, i.e. below whatever the prevailing interest rate is back home, which is somewhere in the double digits. Now, you contrast the intent to invest with what they are actually able to do. So they're able to do personal real estate investment through relatives, which is very obvious, but then everything else is subpar. And what does this mean? It means that there's a huge gap between what they want to do and what they're able to do. And the reason that there is this disparity is actually structural in nature. There is no access vehicle. There is no structured way. There is no transparency, at least elements that are at professional standards. So, if you were to summarize in this study what are the key motivations for the diaspora, what we find, again, contrary to conventional wisdom, is that their intent or their interest in investing back home, number one interest is financial. They want to make money. Right? Helping is number two, but number one is that they want to make money, which means that they are credible investors, right? Number three, clearly social status. They want to be recognized for having contributing to the development of their home country. And then there's this fourth one, which I think is very interesting, which is voice, i.e., they want to be heard. They want to have a way of communicating what their interest is, what their concerns are, and they want the policymakers to listen. So the key challenge for us as businessmen at Gravitas and at Homestrings is how do you take all this information and convert it into a palatable business proposition that achieves four key things. The first one is facilitate access to impactful investment opportunities of the likes presented earlier. Number two, provides reasonable prospects for return. You can't guarantee returns, but at least you can minimize returns. Number three, that you provide transparency, i.e. that they have the ability to run due diligence as if they were an institutional investor. And then last but not least, that they have a voice mechanism, i.e. the ability to communicate their opinions and rate investment opportunities and take position. And the key for us is you have to do all of this in a single business proposition. I give you Homestrings.
What does it mean to be successful? For most expatriates, those individuals like you who have travelled far from home and beaten difficult odds in order to achieve their goals, the meaning of success is often tied to people and places back home that help define who you are and how you see the world. To make a genuine difference in the communities that made us who we are by giving back, it's by far the best definition of success. But finding ways to tangibly, effectively make that difference can be a challenge when you are halfway around the world. Thankfully, now there is a solution that allows you to do well and do good at the same time. Homestrings.com has created a secure, easy-to-use portal through which you can discover and participate in better investment opportunities that measurably improve the quality of life in communities back home. Impact investing through Homestrings.com allows you to benefit financially through thoroughly vetted opportunities while sharing your success in tangible ways with the people and places you care about most. Homestrings offers a seamless platform where each investor receives a custom catalogue of opportunities based on their own preferences. Your own custom dashboard provides you a global view of relevant opportunities and how they perform in terms of investments to date and deadlines to reach their goal. Each listing is easy to navigate and opens up to a full page and fact sheet. Every detail an investor needs to personally vet each opportunity is given, including a standard rating system that shows the overall impact for the greatest risk of each investment. But Homestrings goes beyond mere financial investment. Our social networking element gives members the opportunity to comment on each project so prospects can see what the general consensus is on a given project. And your dashboard gives you real-time details of investments you've made to date and how a particular fund is performing. How long have you been seeking a way to make a difference back home? Become a member of Homestrings and see for yourself what a difference your investment can make. Find out more about how to get started at Homestrings.com.
So, in essence, what we've essentially have achieved is the ability to allow both individual investors, both members of the diaspora and qualified investors and members of the diaspora, to meet project and investment promoters in a single marketplace called Homestrings. On the front end, we basically vet all of the investment opportunities, provide all the due diligence information, i.e. the financial reports, the auditor's reports, the technical reports, the environmental reports, the World Bank country strategy report, the IMF's Article 4 reports, as well as a doing business report are all available in the fact sheet for each investment opportunity, be it a project, be it a fund. As you saw, Actis is very active on the platform with their investment opportunities. And an investor, member of the diaspora, or an individual investor living in the UK or living in Mayfair who wants to invest in Zambia can look at a pipeline of investment opportunities that have been uploaded by the Zambian Development Agency with all of the required due diligence information, and then invest anywhere between £5,000 and £100,000, depending on what the upside is. We have found this to be very, very powerful proposition for investors, whereas there was no other vehicle available for individual investors to participate. We're currently registering members on HomeStrings at the rate of about 5 to 10 a day, approximately about 100 a month. We launched the platform in July of this year. We have a growing book of opportunities coming both from the private sector as well as from the public sector. We have private equity funds, as you probably saw with Actis and some of the others. We recently launched a diaspora bonds platform with the Central Bank of Kenya. They, I think, are raising somewhere between $100 and $400 million targeted at the diaspora to finance infrastructure. They're the first country to launch a very successful diaspora bond program. Ethiopia, I believe Ghana, and others are right behind it. We hope that Zambia is also going to join in that process. We've launched housing units, a housing module, which allows members of the diaspora to finance housing development programs back home, but also participate in lending, a pooling capital to lend through partner banks in country to households in Zambia, for example, to purchase units of real estate, and also buy units of those real estates, of those development projects directly from the platform. And then last but not least, we're going to be launching a deals module where individuals who have transactions would like to raise capital from the platform can actually present actual transactions. An example would be a brewery in Ethiopia looking to raise about $10 million for expansion, or a hospital clinic in Nigeria, or for that case, a mining concern in Zambia who's looking to raise money from the diaspora would come to the platform. So in conclusion, we view ourselves from a positioning strategy as a repository of investment opportunities for the diaspora as well as for other individual investors. We also view ourselves as a platform for vetted projects from promoters. And then last but not least, we want to become the shopping mall for diaspora investments. On that note, I thank you.